Star Wars 7x7 episode 2389. We're going to try a little series here that I'm calling Spinner Sunday for now. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about a rather important story arc that took place in the comics, but it was part of the Clone Wars legacy. I will explain in due course. Punch it. Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So we've talked about this on the podcast a few times here and there, particularly in the run-up to the release of Clone Wars Season 7 on Disney+. But just to give you the brief background refresher, way back in the day when Clone Wars was in Season 5 on Cartoon Network, that was the final season, and at the time, they had a lot of unproduced scripts, a lot of ideas for story arcs that just never made it into production. And so some of those were released as part of a project called the Clone Wars Legacy. So the story animation reels for Crystal Crisis on Utapau, were released, and of course Dark Disciple, the novel by Christie Golden, that adapted 2 different 4-episode story arcs into novel form, and one of those story arcs was converted into comic book form, and that was Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir. Now, the events of Son of Dathomir take place after the episode The Lawless, which is the 16th episode from Season 5 of the Clone Wars. But they were intended to happen, or at least the story was intended to be told, in an eventual 6th season. Naturally, it wasn't, and the Lost Missions that were published on Netflix originally, that are now on Disney Plus as Season 6, they did not include Son of Dathomir. But we have a general idea for when the Son of Dathomir storyline had to have taken place, which I will get to in a little minute or 3. But we know it takes place right after The Lawless because in that episode, Sidious arrived on Mandalore and had a lightsaber fight with Maul and obviously handled him like nobody's business and wouldn't kill him because Sidious said, "I got plans for you," and just zapped him with a bunch of Force lightning. Well, those plans involve taking him to the Spire, which is a heavily guarded and difficult to crack prison, with the goal of eliminating Mother Talzin. How is this going to happen? Well, what Sidious wants to do is get Maul to bring Mother Talzin out of hiding. And so the way that he plots to do that, along with Count Dooku, is to try to get information from Maul about the Shadow Collective, and fearing that they are going to attack the Shadow Collective and possibly overwhelm them, the Separatists in specific, what Maul decides to do is reach out to Mother Talzin, which is exactly what Sidious is hoping for. And the Shadow Collective, just to give you a refresher about that, because there's so many different organizations involved, I needed the refresher too. So it's the Pikes, Black Sun, the Hutts, the Night Brothers, and the Mandalorians of Death Watch are all the Shadow Collective. So Maul is chilling in the Spire, and Prime Minister Almec from Mandalore sends Rook Kast and Gar Saxon to break him out, which does happen, and they retreat to Zanbar, which is a Mandalorian moon, and the Separatists go attack them there. And there's a big battle where Dooku, with a bunch of droid forces, goes to fight the ground battle on Zanbar, but Maul zips up to the droid ships and manages to capture Grievous. And it looks like Dooku's going to win on the surface, but then Maul captures Grievous and makes Grievous deactivate the battle droids, which means the Shadow Collective captures Maul. Oh well. But of course the Jedi had to stick their noses into this, and so they go to investigate the battle, which happened on Ord Mantell. Yes, the Ord Mantell, where Han ran into a bounty hunter and changed his mind about sticking with the rebellion. So the Jedi figure out that the Mandalorians went to this asteroid outpost, which is also known as Vizsla Keep 09, and Vizsla Keep 09 also appeared in Star Wars Rebels. It is where we see Ezra and Maul in the Holocrons of Fate at the beginning of, I think it's Season 3, if I'm not terribly mistaken. But in our Son of Dathomir storyline, they, including Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Jedi, pursue Maul and everybody else to this Mandalorian asteroid outpost. And while they're fighting, Maul basically tells Dooku, look, you can either join me or die to trying to get out of this scrape. And so Dooku agrees. Grievous decides that he's just going to chicken out of there and find some escape pod to get out of there. Maul and Dooku fight as best they can, but ultimately they're forced to flee as well. And the sight of Maul and Dooku working together actually leads Mace Windu to believe that Dooku is the Sith Master and that Maul is the Sith Apprentice, and so that they now know who the rule of two people are, and Darth Sidious is like, hee hee hee, yeah, like, go ahead, believe that, that's fine. And in the meantime, Maul has been in contact with Mother Talzin, and getting Dooku and Grievous, like, this has been all part of what her plan was. She sent Maul to Ord Mantell to fight the Separatists without her being there, so that way it would be set up as a trap where they could bring Dooku back to Dathomir and use him to make herself physically alive again, to give her a corporal body. So they try to drain his life force, but unfortunately for them, Sidious and Grievous arrive on Dathomir and cause all sorts of problems, and there's a fight, and Talzin actually takes over Dooku's body and uses it to fight against Sidious. Sidious, as usual, just straight up evil, has no hesitations about harming Dooku's body and just shoots force lightning at him like crazy, forcing Talzin to finally abandon the body. And Dooku's like, oh yeah, I guess that's just part of being a Sith. And so they end up fighting Talzin. Maul tries to give his life force to Talzin, saying, you know, like, use me to help fight them. And she says, no, you got to get out of here, and gets him away. And unfortunately for her, Talzin is killed in this particular story arc. And Maul is able to escape with the help of the Mandalorians, but significantly, and we talked about this when we were talking about our history of the Darksaber and where it was, the Darksaber is gone in this battle. Maul no longer has it. Or I guess I should say, after this battle, as a result of this battle, he no longer has the Darksaber. And it's not until Rebels, when many of the Spectre Cell folks go to Dathomir, that's when it's rediscovered again. And the next time we see Maul in continuity, funnily enough, is during the Season 7 Ahsoka's Walkabout story arc, where he's communicating with the Pikes, and she is on the Pike homeworld and sees a transmission that he's sending to, you know, give the Pikes some grief. And I say that that's, you know, an interesting coincidence because right after The Lawless, right after Season 5, Episode 16, the final 4 episodes of Season 5 are the episodes where Ahsoka is framed for a murder she didn't commit and ultimately leaves the Jedi Order. So the next time we see her is in that Season 7 story arc, and just like with Maul, the next time we see him is in that Season 7 story arc, at least in animation. And as for where this particular story, the Son of Dathomir story, takes place in the timeline, well, one thing we can say for sure is that it takes place after the events of Episode 9 from Season 6. So we know that the Jedi Tipley is killed in the Son of Dathomir comics, but the Jedi Tipley appears in the first story arc from Season 6, and that's the one where Fives is trying to hunt down the conspiracy about the chips inside the clone's brain. So those are the first 4 episodes of Season 6. And then there's a 2-part series called The Disappeared, a 2-part story arc called The Disappeared. It's episodes 8 and 9 from Season 6. And Mother Talzin is trying to get into a corporal body and is stealing life force from people in that episode, and ultimately isn't able to manifest herself. So it's not until after that story that we have the situation with Maul going to Dathomir and them trying to use Dooku for that purpose. But for now, that is going to do it for a Spinner Sunday look back at Son of Dathomir, the only comic book that was produced for the Clone Wars Legacy series, part of what would have been Season 6 of the Clone Wars. And that is going to do it for this episode of the show as well. It just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for it, as always. And may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
Star Wars 7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2020 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.